Hi, Hope. Thanks for joining us as we're going to continue going into our study in 1 Thessalonians. And we're picking up where we left off now, starting chapter 2. Read with me. For you yourselves know, brothers, that our coming to you was not in vain. But though we had already suffered and been shamefully treated at Philippi, as you know, we had boldness in our God to declare to you the gospel of God in the midst of much conflict. What Paul's doing is he's setting up for an idea. He's setting up for an explanation. And he's reminding them that when Paul originally came and shared that gospel, it didn't come real peacefully. There was conflict surrounding his bringing to them back in Philippi before he came to Thessalonica. There was conflict. And yet in the midst of all that conflict, Paul never wavered or faltered in speaking the gospel message that he had been given. He was confident and he was bold. And he reminds the Thessalonians of that because he wants to tell them why. And here's how he answers that. Verse 3. For our appeal, that's him sharing the gospel, that's his invitation of the gospel, that's his proclamation of the gospel. For our appeal does not spring from error or impurity or any attempt to deceive. But just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak, not to please man, but to please God, who tests our hearts. We never came with words of flattery, as you know, nor with a pretext for greed. God is witness, nor did we seek glory from people, whether from you or from others, though we could have made demands as apostles of Christ. So what has Paul just said? He said, the reason we came to you with this confidence was because we weren't just sharing a story that we'd made up. We weren't sharing a lie. We came to you with confidence not because we were trying to get something from you. We were trying to gain favor with you. No, the reason we had boldness and the reason we had confidence is because our primary goal was to be obedient to the God who'd given us the message that we shared with you. Our primary goal was to worship God, was to please God. And so we were obedient to him when he gave us a message to share in Philippi and then to you in Thessalonica. Paul's boldness in preaching the gospel and speaking the gospel came from his love for God. It came from his confidence that God had spoken to him and that the message about Jesus was true. It wasn't his message. It was God's message. And so Paul spoke boldly and confidently when he came to the Thessalonians. But there's more, because that's not the only way that the Thessalonians could have described Paul's demeanor. He wasn't simply a bold preacher of the gospel. He was also a gentle preacher of the gospel. In verse 7, but we were gentle among you, like a nursing mother taking care of her own children. So, being affectionately desirous of you, we were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves, because you had become very dear to us. And I love this. I love how these two ideas fit together, how Paul explains and reminds me, when we came with the gospel, we were bold and we were gentle. And he says the reason we were bold is because we knew we were speaking God's message and we were speaking to please God. And so regardless of whether we were accepted, we were going to be confident speaking the message about God. And he says, but we were also gentle. And the reason for that was because we genuinely care for you. We genuinely want you to grow and to know God and to be well, and he describes it as having a desirous affection, or this longing to be with them. He connects it to the idea of a mother with her newborn, and how much love there is there and how much desire for the newborn to grow. And he's like, this is the way we engage with you. So we didn't just speak God's message at you, but we actually gave ourselves to you. And it's an amazing, inspiring, convicting, challenging picture of what it means to be ambassadors for Christ, of what it means to be people who preach the gospel. And it reminds me of what Jesus had said to the disciples when he explained how the law works and the heart of the law. It's loving God and loving others. And that's exactly what Paul's doing. He's loving God and he's loving others in his preaching of the gospel. There's another side to this, though, that we could feel defeated reading this passage, right? I mean, it's inspiring and it gives us a direction to go and a way to grow, all those things for sure. And it helps us understand how to be witnesses. And yet at the same time, you can't help but feel we're never going to love people around us that much, all the time. Or I'm never going to get entirely away from being afraid of people's reception of me speaking, And so there's these moments where we kind of fall short of that. And so aren't we glad too that we know that Paul didn't just pull this out of his own character and say, you know what, this is the type of person that I am, but he pulls this out of the character of Jesus. This response in his heart and him speaking this way, this comes from Jesus. Because Jesus has already done these things. I mean, Jesus came down from heaven with a message about God, and he was faithful and he was obedient to speak about the Father and to bring the Father glory, obedient to the point of death on a cross. And then Jesus acts in all of that, we can say, with complete and utter love towards us, right? He gives himself to us. That's what the story of the cross and the resurrection is. It's Jesus saying, I'm going to give myself utterly. My body will be broken for you. My blood will be shed for you. And I love you. And so as we read this, we don't just see Paul worthy of being imitated, but we also hear God's heart to us for us to rest in. We hear Jesus speaking to us saying, I speak to you with the full boldness of desiring the glory of God. And so I speak truth. I am the way and I am the life. And because he loves us, he says, I came to you with gentleness. Not as a judgmental, conquering, dictating king, but as one who would go to the cross so that you could have life. Beautiful Savior, glorious King. And I think we should pause and think about what our role is in taking this gospel into a culture right now that has been broken in racism, that is crying out for justice to be felt and experienced, not by some people, but by all people. And as we speak the gospel and are ambassadors for Christ in this culture and climate, we need to speak with the boldness that comes not from trying to gain people's likes on social media, not trying to get little hearts for what we say and put out there. We should be speaking with the boldness of declaring the gospel of God and worshiping him. That should motivate. That should give us boldness to speak the truth that we find in his word about who people are. Image bearers of God, where their worth comes from, and how Jesus reconciles people first to himself, and then through his reconciliation to himself and to God, there is hope for reconciliation with each other. That's not a message that lands really positively any place in our cultural mix right now. It's offering a different hope than what people want to hear. And it may be engaging more than other people may want to. But we need to speak with boldness for the sake of worshiping our God, out of love for God. And then, as we speak with boldness, we're called to love our neighbor. We're called to genuinely, fully love those around us the way that Jesus has loved us. Even while we were hostile to him, he loved us. Even while we were rebels, he loved us. Even while we were anarchists, he loved us. Even while we were prejudiced, he loved us. And that love is to work its way through us and go outward now in the way that we see people around us. And our neighbors, the people that we have prejudice for, the people that we are angry with because of their prejudice. We're called to love, critiquing and rebuilding and renewing our own heart to the point where we will grieve with those who are grieving the same way that we would if it was our family. We will cry out for justice with those who are asking for it, as if they were our family. This is what it means to love God and love others. And aren't you glad that this is not something we're doing to earn God's favor, or because there's a judgment leveled against us if we don't do it right? But we're doing this because God has already loved us in this way. He's already called us family. He's already grieved with us, mourned with us, shared our burdens. He's already spoken truth over us. He's already sought his own glory, and he's already confidently, boldly proclaimed a gospel and shown us and shared with us where the world is going. And we can be a part of it. I hope this is encouraging for your hope. I look forward to worshiping with you this weekend. Go in peace.